Hare Krishna. Good morning. We're going to begin the talk today with Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 10. Recite the invocation mantras to begin with. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadate Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Tadarjastamo Bhava Kamalobhadayasche Chetayeter Navidham Satam Sattve Prasidati. Hare Krishna everyone, good morning. I'm going to share my screen, recite the verse and purport, and then we'll talk about the topic. I've titled this particular discussion as Not Being Influenced by Others, and I think the verse speaks exactly to that. All right, hopefully you can see my screen here. Devasya mayaya sprishta ye chanyadasat ashritaha Bhramyate dhina tadvakyer atmanyuttapmano haryo. So the translation is, under no circumstances can the words of persons bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord deviate the intelligence of those who are completely surrendered souls. Lord Shri Krishna, purport by Prabhupada, Lord Shri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to all evidences of the Vedas. He is accepted by all acharyas, including Shripad Shankaracharya. But when he was present in the world, different classes of men accepted him differently, and therefore their calculations of the Lord were also different. Generally, persons who had faith in the revealed scriptures accepted the Lord as he is, and all of them merged into great bereavement when the Lord disappeared from the world. In the first canto, we have already discussed the lamentation of Arjuna and Yudhishthira, to whom the disappearance of Lord Krishna was almost intolerable up to the end of their lives. The Yadavas were only partially cognizant of the Lord, but they are also glorious because they had the opportunity to associate with the Lord, who acted as the head of their family, and they also rendered the Lord intimate service. The Yadavas and other devotees of the Lord are different from those who wrongly calculated him to be an ordinary human personality. Such persons are certainly bewildered by the illusory energy. They are hellish and are envious of the Supreme Lord. The illusory energy acts very powerfully on them. And because in spite of their elevated mundane education, such persons are faithless and are infected by the mentality of atheism. They are always very eager to establish that Lord Krishna was an ordinary man who was killed by a hunter due to his many impious acts, in plotting to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and Jarasandha, the demoniac kings of the earth. Such persons have no faith in the statement of the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord is unaffected by the reactions of work. Namam karmani limpanti name karma phale spriha. According to the atheistic point of view, Lord Krishna's family, the Yadu dynasty, was vanquished due to being cursed by the Brahmanas for the sins committed by Krishna in killing the sons of Dhritarashtra, etc. All these blasphemies do not touch the heart of the devotees of the Lord, because they know perfectly well what is what. Their intelligence regarding the Lord is never disturbed, but those who are disturbed by the statements of the Asuras are also condemned. That is what Uddhava meant in this verse. Pretty strong verse. I'm going to actually go back to the verse and share my screen again. So verse is Devasya Mayaya Sprishta Ye Chanyad Asat Ashritaha. So let's go through this verse line by line. Devasya Mayaya Sprishta. Maya is Maya, and Devas Mayaya means by Maya. Sprishta means to be touched. Here the context is infected, or you could say influenced. So persons who are ye is those persons. So those persons who are sprishta, or touched, or infected or influenced by Maya, which by the way is possessed by Deva, or the Supreme Lord. So Maya is a property of Deva or Krishna, and that Maya being manipulated by Krishna touches the persons of this material world, and what happens? Chanyad asad ashritaha. These persons are asad ashritaha. This word ashrita is very important in the Bhagavad Gita. It appears many times, as in the Bhagavatam. Ashrita means taking shelter. Asad means temporary or not true. Asad means literally not true or false. Here the context is illusory energy. So one who takes shelter of the illusory energy are those who have been influenced by Maya that is controlled by Krishna. Now, for such persons, they tend to talk a lot. And so the third line speaks about tadvakyar. Their statements, their words, their ways of speaking, etc., their convictions, their values, comes out in a way that tries to influence others to buy into their ideas. And the first section of the third line says, Brahmyate dhir na. Those who are not Brahmyate, their intelligence, their dhir is not Brahmyate, or not influenced, or not disturbed. Brahma, by the way, Brahma means, or Brahma means mistaken or bewildered. So Brahmyate means their intelligence is not mistaken or bewildered by the words of those who have taken shelter of the illusory energy. Who are those people? Those people are, and the Sanskrit is very rich. Atmanyuktatmano haro. The word upta is in Sanskrit, it means like being sown or grounded or planted. So when one's Atma, when the self is grounded or planted in the Atmani, or in the Supreme Self, and the mood is they're surrendered onto Haro. Those persons who are very grounded are unaffected, the intelligence is unaffected, na brahmyate dhir, by the tadvakir of the words of those who take shelter of the illusory energy. So the translation is, under no circumstances can the words of persons bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord deviate the intelligence of those who are completely surrendered souls. So, nice topic. It's a big topic. The context is Vidura has asked Uddhava, what about all the Yadu dynasty and the Yadavas and Krishna especially? Where's Krishna? He's so excited to have seen Uddhava as a representative of the Yadu dynasty, as a friend of Krishna. He just, series of questions in the previous chapter. Please tell me, please tell me. Uddhava is in a very somber mood. He's feeling deep pain and loss and separation because he just lost Krishna. Vidura is seeing Uddhava in the evening, and Krishna just left in the morning of that day. So, can you imagine how much Uddhava loves Krishna? We see in the 11th canto, there's this elaborate explanation, elaborate description of this exchange between Uddhava and Krishna. The affection between them is so strong, way beyond any kind of, let's say, a very good husband-wife relationship, a very good parent-child relationship. The affection of Krishna and Uddhava is so strong. And such a mutual appreciation between them. Gosh, it's such a delight and a joyous thing to read and study the Uddhava Gita. Besides all of the lessons of life, to see their relationship is so wonderful. And Uddhava just saw his master leave, his cousin, his master, his all in all, just leave in the morning. He's distraught, he's pained, he's in that condition. Vidura is asking him these questions about Krishna, and his mind goes to Krishna in deep ecstasy and sadness simultaneously. And then he realizes he has a service to answer Vidura, so he comes back down to the being present with Vidura and wants to offer his response. And so he begins speaking about, what can I say? Krishna has left. Krishna has left, and this, like the sun has set. He's feeling a lot of grief. He's feeling deep feelings of separation, and then he's telling Vidura that the Yadu dynasty, we all were unfortunate because we didn't understand Krishna to be the personality of Godhead. The Yadu dynasty saw Krishna as the super soul, and that was their level of realization. They did a lot of service for Krishna, and therefore they were unfortunate because they couldn't go past understanding Krishna as the supreme soul among all beings. They didn't see him as the personality of Godhead in a very absorbed way in the Bhagavan conception. So they, he's calling the Yadu dynasty unfortunate. That's sort of text 8 and 7, 8, 9. And now in text 10, he's prefacing what comes forward in forward verses. Uddhava is going to be speaking about Krishna's departure. And he's going to start saying how Krishna departed and for what reasons, what his internal reasons were to depart. But he prefaces it with this verse, saying that pure devotees of the Lord are unbewildered or unshaken. They understand Krishna's motivations. And first of all, they understand who Krishna is. And they understand Krishna's motivations so much better than anyone else, that if somebody tries to influence them about who Krishna is and why Krishna was left the world the way he left, because Prabhupada says in the purport, Some people say Krishna was receiving the reaction to his sin of having killed Jarasandha and the sons of Dhritarashtra. He was, what a silly conception, that he's under the influence of karma. And in fact, there is a whole philosophy in the Vedic tradition called Karma Mimamsa philosophy that says the highest principle is karma. You do good, you get good. That's the highest principle. Even God's subjected to that, so no need to pray to God. It's an atheistic principle. It's an atheistic school of thought. And some people say, Krishna was killed by the hunter. So Uddhava is, before he begins explaining what the real situation is, as Prabhupada says, what is what? The devotees understand what is what. Before he does that, he's making this statement that people influenced by the illusory energy do not know what is what. They cannot see Krishna. Because they've taken shelter, asad ashata, they've taken shelter of asad. And in contrast, those who have taken shelter of Krishna, upta atmana, where they're grounded in the self-conception, they're grounded in their relationship with Krishna. It's a very internal grounding. It's a very internal mood of understanding and feeling their relationship with Krishna. For them, they're not influenced by others. In this particular case, it's being influenced by who Krishna is and why Krishna left. In life, we might be influenced by others around what's pleasurable, what should we do, how should we spend our time, go to Vegas or enjoy a vacation in Iceland or those kind of things. Or perhaps conception of life. So many people we meet say, life is meant to be enjoyed. Just enjoy, right? What else is life about? Do you live once? Life is short. Enjoy. Sometimes we might get influenced by insults of others. Yesterday I had a very nice experience. I was at Northwestern University. It was a really late night because it's far away. But last night evening we had a workshop on mindfulness on steroids. We shared the story of Avanti Brahman. It's amazing how you can take the Bhagavatam and share it with brand new people. And, there was a group of about 15 students. They felt very enlivened and inspired by the end of it. Brand new. Well, half of them were brand new to anything bhakti or Krishna consciousness. And they soaked up a story from the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam speaking about real shelter. And Avanti Brahman, even though he was insulted by so many people, not just insulted, beaten upon, he would struggle so much to just get a little bit of food. And when he was about to eat that food, people started to pee in that food, spit on his face, beat him up. Not just insults. I mean, goodness, the atrocities that he went through. Yet his mood was Itam sastaya paratmanishtam, where he's taken real shelter of paratmanishtam. He's fixed in the Supreme Soul. He wasn't influenced. He wasn't affected. He wasn't disturbed by even those kind of people. Another being influenced by others, when Krishna left, some might want to, and Uddhava sort of indirectly addresses it, some might want to say, Uddhava, but Krishna is just an ordinary person. Historical personality that just left. Why are you losing it so much? Why are you getting disturbed? People have difficulty, in general, people have difficulty with grief and pain that others are going through. And it takes a lot of skill. I spent some time with a student yesterday who recently lost his sister to a car accident. It was about a year ago. But there's something called grief bursts, that these surges of pain and lamentation come up, even after a long time. And the student was telling me that, I thought I was doing okay all of last year, but suddenly this year it's been so difficult. Excellent student, does very well in school, etc., etc. But it's just sometimes grief can be overwhelming. He was sharing with me, every time I try to talk to a friend, they want to pass on my BC and try to say, it was okay, she's going to be fine. She actually went, or they might say, they might try to evade the conversation. Yeah, you don't want to talk about it because it'll just make you more sad and things like that. So I told him, people are uncomfortable speaking about sad things. It's just the way of life. People are uncomfortable with their own mortality, they're uncomfortable with pain and distress, and so they cannot be there and accompany and companion another person. And this, what someone needs who's going through grief, they just need to be able to digest the experience and speak about it. So I spent an hour just hearing him out and listening to stories about his sister and how he's having dreams of her and things like that. It's so wonderful, so healing. He felt so light after that experience, as opposed to heavy with the grief that just locked in for him. So otherwise, people might want to do that with Uddhava and say, don't think about Krishna or don't grieve so much. It's not a big deal. But Uddhava is going through that grief. Of course, this is transcendental grief, very, very different. At the same time, these emotions are something that people want to remove or take away or wash away. So this concept of not being influenced by others, we find it also in the very beginning of the Gita. Chapter 2, text 52, Krishna says, Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyatita rishyati tada gantasi nirvedyam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. If I got that verse right. So Krishna is saying that all of what we hear or what is to be heard or what we hear doesn't affect one who passes above or is beyond the forest of delusion. One of the questions we might have is how do we not be influenced by unwholesome association? Being influenced by right association is great. How do we not be influenced by unwholesome association? The answer to that is, at least my response to that question is the example of Prahlad Maharaj. Or let me step back and say the principle. The principle is Ramanujacharya says, if we want to gain a quality, the best way to gain a quality is to find a role model and develop a relationship with that role model and appreciate the quality they have, and naturally that quality become ours by the process of osmosis. Prahlad Maharaj is one such person. Super 5-year-old boy. Usually children are most impressionable, especially at that age. Of course, when they become teenage, then all hell breaks loose. But at that age of 5 to 7 years old, very impressionable. Prahlad Maharaj was at that age, he had his dad trying to influence him. He had Shanda and Amarika trying to influence him. He had his friends trying to influence him, which can be a very powerful influence, peer pressure, as they say. Yet Prahlad Maharaj was so fixed, upta atmana, as this verse is saying. He was grounded in the self-conception. His mind and heart was fully dedicated to Hari, such that it didn't matter what his dad did or said. It didn't matter what his teachers did or said. He was fixed in his conception, and he was fixed in his goal of life, even to the point of allowing himself to be subjected to violence and abuse, severe abuse by his dad. Severe. I mean, I can't even imagine being in that situation. What it would be like? Gosh, just to get this mad father out of my, off my back. I'd want to maybe assuage him or give him some kind of pacifying words. But Prahlad didn't do that at all. The very first time his dad asked, "Hey, dear son," he smelt his head, rubbed his head, gave him an embrace, sat him on his lap. He said, "What did you learn in school?" And Prahlad said, "Tat sadhu manye suravarya dehinam sada samudvigna dhiyama sadgrihan hitvatma patam griham andakupam vanam gato yad harim ashrayeta." See, this word ashrayeta comes, or ashrita, that's in this verse today. And also the word asad also comes in this verse, where Prahlad is speaking to his father, just one verse. What did you learn? What's the best thing you learned in school? Tat sadhu manni. I think that the sadhu, the most wonderful thing that I've learned in school is, then he refers to his dad, Asurya Varya, the best of the asuras, or best of the demons, dad. Dehinam sada samudvigna dhyam asad grihad. That those who are asad grihad, or in this verse it says asad ashrita. You see the word asad is there? Asad grihad or asad ashrita. If you're taking asad grihad means to grab or to inherit or whatever. So asad grihad means he's taking the conception of illusion and making it his own. Or asad ashrita, should take the shelter of illusion. For those person, what do they experience? Sada samudvigna. They're constantly disturbed. They're constantly in anxiety. He's actually referring to his dad. You're constantly in anxiety, dad. I see it. So, what should one do? Hitvatma patam griham andakupam. My dear dad, give up your family life, which is just like a deep dark well of ignorance, and vanam gato yad harim ashrayeta. Go take ashraya or ashrita of Hari, go take shelter of Hari, and go to the forest. Specifically Vrindavan is how Prabhupada translated. His father is like half amused, half upset. Like, whoa, where did this guy come from? Speaking about Vishnu and taking shelter of Hari. So he called, he gave a small smirk. He called Shanda and Amarka, the teachers, and said, "This guy has been influenced by unwholesome people, like devotees of Vishnu. Can you fix that situation? Go take care of Prahlad Maharaj. Make sure he's properly trained." So Shanda and Amarka say, aye, Captain. They take Prahlad Maharaj back to the school and they're trying to figure out, Prahlad, how did you learn all this stuff? All this nonsense. Vishnu is the enemy. And Prahlad tells him, where did you come up with this idea of friend and enemy? There's no such thing. And the story goes on. The next time his dad puts him on his lap, and then he again asks him, so what's the best thing you've learned in school? By this time, Shanda and Amarka has taught Prahlad principles of diplomacy, principles of how to be a king, how to lead a group of people in a way that's, asuric, demoniac. So again, he asks him, what's the best thing you learned in school? This time, instead of one verse, he gives him 2 verses to his father. Those 2 verses start with Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam, the 9 processes of bhakti. And he says, I think this is the best thing and the goal of life. At that time, Hiranyakashipu didn't like it at all. He wasn't amused anymore. He pushed his son off his lap. He got so upset at him, he was gonna, beat the heck out of him. But first he went to the teacher and said, how in the world has this guy learned this nonsense? The teachers were scared out of their skin. They wanted to defend themselves immediately, and they started to try to appease Hiranyakashipu. He wasn't going to be appeased. And finally, he felt somewhat convinced by the teacher's explanations, went back to Prahlad and said, Prahlad, where have you learned this nonsense? Now, imagine being in that sort of heated situation with such intense emotions and anger and very likely strong punishment. Was Prahlad influenced? Not one. So when his dad asked him, where have you learned this? Prahlad says, Matir. Now, so first, when his father asked, 1 verse, then 2 verses, now 3 verses. Matirna Krishne parato svatova mitho vipaddeta grihavritanam adanta gobir vishatanta misram punah punascharvita charvananam. Then goes on to say, Nate vidu swartagatim hi Vishnu. Some of you may know those verses. So Prahlad said, Dad, if I told you where I learned this, you wouldn't get to know, you wouldn't understand, you wouldn't know. Matirna Krishne Parata Svatova. With your endeavor, with somebody else's endeavor, or Mitho Vipadya. If you both try to figure it out, you won't figure it out. This is a very deep subject matter. You can't understand it. You're too absorbed in your material life, you're too absorbed in your, grihastha life. What will you know? And you're simply, chewing the chewed over and over again, trying to squeeze out enjoyment with that from that which has already been enjoyed. So Prahlad has such strong self-conception, such strong shelter in Krishna. He is zero influenced by what would be a very intense situation for others to handle. So that's Prahlad Maharaj. The more Ramanujacharya expresses this principle, and we can take it if we want to be more grounded within the self, we want to live more by our values instead of being like a feather in the wind, being pushed by the words of people we don't necessarily hold in highest regard. Ramanujacharya says, develop a relationship with Prahlad Maharaj and glorify him and take inspiration from him. So this is actually in the Bhagavatam also. It discusses these 3 levels of devotees: Kanishta devotee, Madhyama devotee, and Uttama devotee. One of the symptoms of a Kanishta, or the lowest class or third class devotee, is that they're very easily moved by the words of others. Their faith is pliable, it's weak. Right? When one comes to the Madhyama stage, one's faith is strong, but they cannot very easily convince others and make others' faith strong. And then at the Uttama level, one's own faith is very well rooted, and they are able to also strongly influence others to have that same kind of faith. And why do Kanishtas generally experience such faltering of their faith? Because they have these basic human needs that they haven't fully satisfied or understood how to apply in spiritual life. The need for looking for validation, looking for self-worth, by agreeing with others, etc. So they're not upta atmana, they're not grounded, they're not well planted in the self-conception. So the Kanishta and the faith can be easily challenged by others, either by pleasurable material enjoyment, or by insults, or by conceptions of what's right, what's true, what's life, etc. And most vulnerable are those persons like children in school, or when we are exposed to people at work, social media, LinkedIn, etc. When we go to LinkedIn, some of us are now in our career life, and when you look at LinkedIn, oh, my friends are growing so nicely in my career, look at me, So these kind of influences, social media, peer pressure in schools, on work environment, it tends to water down our goal of life. Because we allow ourselves to be influenced by those asat ashrita. They've taken shelter of the illusory energy. And this is a very key point in Nectar of Instruction. Text 2 says what one should not do is, and not associate with materialistic person, because it will destroy one's bhakti. And the same principle of association is brought up again in text 3. What will help enhance bhakti is association of devotees. So important, this principle of association. And it's not being physically proximate. That's not association. It's who we make ourselves vulnerable to. That's what taking association means. Who do we make ourselves vulnerable to? Who do we look for validation, self-worth, and community, and my own well-being? What relationships make me whole and happy? That's the key question. Not that we are physically close to a person, so I don't want to associate with them or something like that. So, besides Prahlad Maharaj, the example of Srila Prabhupada is also very strong. In fact, if it weren't for Prabhupada's, this quality of Prabhupada of not being influenced by others, we wouldn't be here. We're all here today speaking from Srimad Bhagavatam by his grace, learning these most powerful principles and, elevating our lives. Prabhupada had this vyavasayatmika buddhi, this focused intelligence. People told him, Swamiji, you're going to die trying to go to America in a cargo ship. Prabhupada wasn't fazed at all. He'd never seen snow before. He didn't know if he was going to eat, have food to eat properly. He took a little bit of cereal or whatever with him when he went. I can't even imagine what it was like, to make that decision. Despite all advice coming at you to not do it, Prabhupada did it. Powerful conviction. Upta Atmana, fully grounded in self-conception. Now, I'll sort of end with this this idea. While not being influenced by others will want to try to influence us, be it family or friends or work colleagues or what have you. One aspect of maturity, I believe, is being able to hear another person's perspective, empathize maybe if needed, and still be distant from that energy without necessarily being arrogant, and even sometimes even appreciating their point of view. As Prabhupada would say, when you're dealing with materialistic people like students in college, appreciate their point of view, and then they'll be more open to hearing your point of view. We see in the story of Vali and Sugriva in the Ramayana that Vali just would not hear what Sugriva had to say. And that caused a huge rift in the relationship. He just would not listen. He would not give that time to Sugriva to help explain. He was just very convinced and shut him out. Only later, when he was dying, did he realize his mistake of doing that. Pretty late to do that, but what to do? Some people need to learn the hard way. So not just shutting people out of our lives because perhaps their value system doesn't match ours, or that they are asad grahat or asad ashrita, they've taken shelter, they'll use their energy, because we risk then being like Vali. One example I like very much is of Mahaprabhu, and Gaur Purnima is coming up soon, so I'll share the example of Mahaprabhu, who, Chand Kazi really violated the sanctity of the devotee Sangha by breaking the instruments, or at least permitting that the instruments be broken for kirtan. And Mahaprabhu took exception to that. He started this civil rights movement, so to speak, or this revolution, and had a number of people go along with him. He wasn't going to accept what Chand Kazi did as okay. Yet the Chaitanya, I don't know if it's about Chaitanya Bhagavatam or Chaitanya Charitamrita, speaks about how Mahaprabhu entered the house of Chand Kazi. Chand Kazi was, he was so scared because you have these hundreds and thousands of angry Bengali devotees going to, try to take revenge. He went and hid himself in the house. The scripture says that Mahaprabhu came to the door. His eyes were, even though he came, you could say, out of anger, his eyes were as peaceful and calm as a steady lake. He just had this depth of compassion and aura of kindness emanating from him, even though he was fighting at that time. And the Qazi felt that. And Mahaprabhu made him feel comfortable and warm and welcomed, and they had a very enlivening discussion on the Quran and spiritual principles in general. So Mahaprabhu, even when in disagreement, he wasn't in a disturbed state of mind. He still had this non-arrogant, peaceful, calm disposition. Very inspirational. So we might have when we try to, we usually are falter, or we kind of go back and forth between being influenced by others or just completely rejecting them. And what I'm saying is there's potential for a happy medium when there's maturity and dealing with people in a more wholesome way, where you can agree, but do so, with some heart. All right, so I'll pause there. It's 8:15, and see if there's any of you have some comment or from this particular verse, your own realizations, your thoughts, or if you have a question that you want to bring up.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisance. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Please accept mine.
Quite provoking class, which definitely tells volumes about the training that you have received. Not only in the spiritual practice, but also in your service area. And I deeply appreciate hearing from you. Bear with me because my throat and
take your time.
Chest are not. So you just concluded saying the non-arrogant and calm disposition with which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dealt with Chand Kasi, and so and also you spoke a lot about getting influenced by anything and everything that happens in one's surroundings. But it takes someone to be in a very mature position to be able to, someone who is really grounded, or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Krishna himself, and Prahlad Maharaj, such a spiritually advanced devotee, and such personalities, they're acting in at a different platform. They are not influenced by anything and everything that comes in their direction, and they're such, they show in their behavior what that maturity really looks like. It's not for them, it's a natural natural behavior which is coming out of their own what to call it, their own being, who they are. And of course we are also who we are, but ordinary human beings in a community like ours, it is like in a small, very young community, where anyone and everyone is in their own space, and also not that much grounded. And then also we know that how people get influenced by the wrong conceptions, and one's mental makeup influencing another one's. So anyway, the devotees need to grow, and these spiritual principles are something to look upon and slowly imbibe, and at least aspire to be that, and that kind of a consciousness. All the lectures and classes are meant for helping us to be more introspective, and at least aspire to grow in the right direction. So I was just thinking that everyone in a community is it is they're in their own journey, their own state of growth, and we cannot expect everyone to be that stable or mature or grounded, or remembering the principles. And this again, it brings this kind of a thought that the care for the devotees to help them grow is so important in communities like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the effort that you are trying to put forward here, because this devotee care means helping people to think think in terms of the best behavior, the best way of understanding scriptures, applying it in your life. So I'm very grateful for your presence here, and I value this more and more and more. I think this is the first Srimad Bhagavatam class I heard that you have given, and I deeply appreciate what you said, and I think there is a lot more in your training, and in your experience in your own spiritual practice that you can share. It's such a valuable thing, and I'm very, very grateful for your presence here. I just wanted to express that.
I feel very humbled by what you just said, and encouraged, very encouraged. Thank you so much, Mataji. And I too am very enlivened to be in the community. Honestly, I was sharing with the devotee care committee that I'm seeing how my family are integrating with their friends, and that's very satisfying for me. And And I can see myself being able to build some very meaningful relationships, especially with yourself. So I'm grateful, Mataji. Thank you. All right. Anyone else would like to share something? We have 8 minutes left. Or can I open up to reflections? What are some takeaways for you from this conversation? Amrita Kelly, Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. It was nice, as Premanand Mataji is saying. You brought up so much of deep introspective thoughts and messages. Many things actually, but particularly this influencing, as you were saying, like most of the times it's an outside influence, I think, but sometimes it can be the internal influences also, which are kind of, probably coming from the samskaras from other external things. And one thing you mentioned is we may be influenced by some so-called negative or insulting things. That was very striking for me, because I was always thinking either positive, like wholesome association or unwholesome association. We will be influenced when the other person is, I don't know, kind of nice to us. You were saying like how when we talk to friends, oh, life is meant to enjoy and do this and do that. We will be so carried forward with that. That's kind of, easy to understand, and probably we can be guarding against ourselves in those situations. But this other side you brought up, it really, very thought-provoking for me, because I'm not too cautious that I will be influenced by that situation. But I'm actually seeing myself and one of my close family members influenced by that kind of a negative situation, which, like even after many, many years, it's so debilitating and like completely, paralyzing. Just want to hear a little bit more on that. It may be a little bit psychological discussion, but it really was interesting for me.
Sure. But I want to sort of share with you a slide that I present to college students on how the influence, the internal influences, not from others, but our own minds. Okay? Because I think you were referring to that, right? Like how internally our own minds impact us.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So take a look at this one. I think you'll like it. I don't know if I'm sharing the right screen. Okay. Am I sharing the right screen? Can you see the mind is like?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
Okay. The mind is like. What is the mind like? A monkey. This is actually from one of the Vedic scriptures that speaks to this. The mind is like a monkey. Actually, no, not so much like a monkey. The mind is like a drunken monkey. So, all the college students are laughing, looking at that. Think about a monkey, how it's like moving all over the place, scratching here, scratching there. And then imagine if a monkey is drunken. What would that look like? Okay? And then, no. Mine is not like a drunken monkey. The mind is like a drunken monkey stung by a scorpion. How disturbed can that kind of mind be? Actually, no. The mind is like a drunken monkey stung by a scorpion, possessed by a ghost. And here's your monkey. This is our mind. A drunken monkey stung by a scorpion and possessed by a ghost. It is but natural that we are disturbed internally. And we got to watch our own minds. It's the biggest non-devotee. Do you know that?
I do.
It's the biggest. It's the most powerful non-devotee that we are associating with. So the second question around, or second point that you brought up around being influenced, but not being so careful about being influenced by the glitter and glamour verbiage of others. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Krishna brings us up repeatedly, and I know I missed it, and I think a lot of devotees, a lot of people that study the Gita miss it. When we read the Bhagavad Gita, at the very beginning, Krishna says to tolerate happiness. The very beginning. Matra spashastu konteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agamapai no nitya. Sukha and dukkha, both we have to tolerate. Tolerating distress makes sense. Have we contemplated and really thought about tolerating happiness? What does that mean, tolerating happiness? My understanding of it is the more we subject ourselves to the pleasures of life and allow ourselves to be vulnerable to enjoy the pleasures of life, in material life that is, the more we set up ourselves to be disturbed by distresses. Think of it like a Ferris wheel. The more we go higher, the greater the fall. And so we've got to be really, really careful of things like honor and zip and buzz of sense gratification and happiness with material life, because those are triggers for us to get more invested in the material world we're living in, that then lets us, that in the opposite direction makes us more disturbed and tied back to samsara. Perhaps even more challenging to identify and deflect or not be influenced by is this enticements for enjoyment. Krishna addresses in the last part of the 3rd chapter of the Gita, when he talks about lust being the enemy of the soul. It's a big deal. Being able to ward off this influence of trying to enjoy. So it's not that we become catatonic, but the idea is to let's say somebody influences us and they're important to us, the relationships are important to us, they influence us to do something enjoyable. The protection that we can put around ourselves and not be arrogant, as we were saying earlier, is maybe for the relationship, we do that enjoyable thing, but internally our consciousness is, this is for service ultimately. Service to the person who I'm appeasing, but also service to Krishna in some way. And trying to make that connection. How is this activity service to Krishna? How can I make this activity service to Krishna, even though the other person is motivated primarily by enjoyment? For example, watching a movie with our children. Our children like to watch movies. Sometimes they want to watch a movie. I mean, we could just say, no, don't watch a movie. Or we can watch a movie with them and, investing in that relationship with the children and finding jewels of wisdom of life through that. Like, I remember when the pandemic first hit, my kids and I, they really wanted to watch this thing called, it's Our Planet. It's a series on Netflix. So it tells you all about the planet and this and that about animals and how we're affecting the planet and life in different parts of the jungle and in the snow-covered Antarctic regions and so on and so forth. And one of my key takeaways is, wow, every animal in this world, including humans, are so driven by food and sex. It is like inbuilt, wired into every living entity. So I got some jewels of wisdom from watching Our Planet that I felt very grateful for. And we were doing something the kids really wanted to do, watch Our Planet, as an example. Does that help?
Yes, Prabhu, very helpful and leading to further introspection. Thank you so much.
All right, so we're at 8:32, and I think respecting time, and everyone's Saturday is probably, you got to go shopping or do whatever you need to do on a Saturday. I know Govinda Moini has probably got to go to work. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your presence and the discussion, allowing me to share some thoughts on Srimad Bhagavatam. Take care. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.